Hi, everyone. You're going to love today's episode of Let's Go There. Our guest today, Dr. Craig Cummings, is a leader who's taken his experience in military intelligence and turned it into a powerhouse for innovation and investment. But he's not just a soldier, professor, founder, and leader. He's a man who leads with his heart, no matter the setting or circumstance. He's a husband and a father who gets the meaning of life. He's currently the co-founder of Moonshots Capital, a venture capital fund dedicated to supporting veteran entrepreneurs. In our conversation, he reflects on his transition from the battlefield to the boardroom, building companies like Ride Scout, and why investing in bold ideas is more important now than ever. Craig's personal perspective on leadership and resilience is one you won't want to miss. C-Regs, you fire me up! Hey y'all, let's go there. Okay, so Craig, I feel like we need to disclose something to our audience because you're probably one of the people closest to me that I've had on the podcast so far. So we just need to come clean, come out of the closet that we're actually friends. And I will say,
about the podcast that I've done, I am most close to you of all of them. So it's both ways.
All right. So we've come clean and we'll talk about how we know each other in a little bit. But one of the reasons I wanted you on, and you and I talked about this, is because first and foremost, you've done amazing things in the world. There's not very many people out there that have lived the lifetimes that you have inside of your young life. I mean, from West Point grad to professor to Truman Scholar to entrepreneur to serving in our military as an intelligence officer, supporting the NSA. It's like out of a movie, all the different lifetimes that you've lived. But that's actually not why I want to have you on. It's because you're one of the people that is one of the most heartfelt, heart-led people that I know. And you're so pure intended. And it drives everything that you do, both in business and in your life. So I wanted to talk about you. And also selfishly, while we're close, there's a lot I still don't know about you. So I wanted to get to know how you became the Craig that you are today. I want to hear about Craig from the beginning.
Or tissue box is close. I feel
you
like
wouldn't be the first.
Going to be like the Henry Crown Fellowship. We're going to need some tissue box.
Well, you'd have it coming though, because you made me cry. You made me cry for the first time in 10 years in that seminar room, which we'll get to in a second.
Oh,
so you have it coming, brother.
I remember. Yeah, I'll try to power through that one. So from the earliest days?
Yeah, as early as you can remember. Take us back
there. Like headline is, father was an Air Force intelligence officer. And I didn't really know he was an intel officer till like way late. I think I'd already chosen intel as a career, as bad as that may sound.
As
I knew
where
he worked, but I never really processed him as an intel officer. So my father was an Air Force intel officer. First one to go to college in his family. Oldest brother, Dan, West Point. 83. Middle brother, Steve, West Point, 86. I'm 93. Parents divorced and separated 82. In 84, they got divorced. And then my mom worked as a Department of the Army civilian. So Air Force, Army. So I would joke that we don't have family reunions. We have family formations when we get together. So, but I was mostly raised by my mom. They separated when I was 12. So, I was sixth grade. And I think as I was reflecting on this podcast, thinking like, whatever we say about sons raised by single moms, that's I probably am in that bucket. And that probably ties into my heart and, and how I lead, to use your words, with love.
Yeah.
But scrappy, we did not have, we're not poor. It was, of course, like, middle income, mowed yards, had a portfolio, snow, shoveled snow, delivered the Washington Post, worked as a busboy. Well, started in the kitchen, and the American Dream became the host. After like working in all the places throughout the restaurant, I wasn't old enough to be a waiter. And so always working hard. And that's all I knew, played sports. And then ended up being president of my class in high school. West Point is leader, scholar, athlete. So president of the class, was playing golf and baseball and doing pretty well academically. And my brothers, that's all I'd seen was like, or when you have football and these pretty girlfriends and big rings and nice cars and parades. And we'll say this and then I'll pause. So I go to West Point and they give you an in brief on day one. And then they say, okay, you have 60 seconds. Say goodbye to your family. Family, friends that way. New cadets that way. So we hug, walk out the door, and like fire breathing dragons screaming at us like, get out, like, get on the bus, get on the bus. And this day is called reception day. It's you could watch it and you could Google it. And they take you in a single day from like high school with long hair and flip flops to marching on field 8 hours later. And 2 weeks into West Point, I'm like, this place like sucks. This place. I had no idea.
Was that your shit moment?
It's just like poor diligence on my part. You would think I would have known this, but I was just like, I'd like everything I've seen about West Point, I'm going. And then I called back to my brothers. I'm like, you guys didn't tell me anything about this place. And they said, well, we thought if we told you too much, you might not want to go. And then I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it. And then I ended up having like the most amazing experience.
Where did that grit, that in Spanish we call it ganas, that motivation come from?
I've never been really competitive with others.
But you're competitive with yourself.
I think so. I think I'm trying to achieve, and I think it's sort of that middle class to go to a prestigious undergraduate university. And then after that, I was thinking like Ivy League, which I did do. Now I've come full circle to think, I don't care where people went to school. Like some of my best business partners, like some of them didn't go to college, right? So it's funny how I've evolved in this, but I think at the time I was just like I got voted most likely to succeed in high school. So it was like people were seeing things in me, and I think I was probably just trying to achieve the things that they were seeing.
Trying to honor that. So let me back up for a second. You talked about your mom, and obviously I've met your mom and I've heard her talk about you, which is so sweet in public forum. But tell me about the relationship with your dad.
I talked to him last night, and it had been probably 2 months I hadn't talked to him. I would say close, but yet not close. Like we don't talk all that often. His wife died a little bit over a year ago, and he's kind of gone dark. He was never like picking up the call on we do with our kids and like FaceTiming them, and he's never that one. But he was always the disciplinarian. Like when you're 18, you're out of the house. So in our family, we generally don't see each other, although I see my mom a lot. I talk to my brothers almost every day by text, but we were never that family that was so tight. And I think because their families, like grandparents, had like very, very modest, poor, both of them in trailers and in Arizona. Their families grew up. And so
they were just
they
surviving.
were not like going on vacations and like going out to dinner and say, tell me everything you love about our family. Like they weren't doing that. And I have processed that. And this gets to a lot in like touch, like, and having to learn touch and like cuddling.
You had to learn it? You are such an affectionate person. You learned it?
I mean, I'm always trying to improve in like the hand holding, the walk over, say hello. And Lawton would definitely call that out as not a strength of mine, but I'm coachable.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get better.
Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about your time at West Point. You had quite the reputation there. You had a nickname.
I had a couple nicknames. I think what you might be thinking of is what I told you was this title called the King of Beast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I also had another nickname. They call me Regs, C-Reg, which implies like you're a rule follower. Like I wasn't that much of a rule follower.
I'm not buying that one.
But I never got any demerits at West Point. I never got a single one. And they just said C-Regs instead of saying Craig. I'm like C-Regs. So they still like are in our chat group, they'll call me Regs.
Okay. So what made that the case? How did you avoid the demerits?
You just don't get caught.
That sounds like the Greg I know. That's hilarious.
Yes.
Okay.
Know where the cameras are.
Okay.
But the King of Beast was, they're always putting you in new leadership positions at West Point. And then there's 4 sort of top jobs for seniors in their last summer. And it's King of Beast 1 and 2, and then the regimental commander at Buckner. And I know this is a little military speak, but King of Beast is known as this. It's a high profile job, and one cadet does it for 3 weeks, another does it for 3 weeks. So I did the second 3 weeks, and I had the class of 96. So I was 93. I had the class of 96. And you're like the front of the cadet, like you're at the front of the parade. They're reporting into you. And I really love that class. And like you got me thinking about like loving this class. And I was never saying that word. We weren't saying like love and leadership in the same sentence in 1992.
But you felt it.
I did. And it is the way I led, because I wasn't very good at being so military. In fact, I've been reflecting since you told me to reflect a little bit that I've never been that military. Like I've had told to me 50 plus times, I can't believe you're in the military.
Yeah.
Like it's both like compliment and they're like, okay.
Yeah. How does it hit you when
right.
somebody says that to you?
I mean, I want to be associated with, and I want to be associated with the DNA. I think it's because it probably is part leading with love and not as much toughness maybe. And if we're told options A, B, and C, I'm like, have you thought about D? But anyway, that King of Bees, I used to say to them, 96, you'd fire me up. And it became like a thing. And then they loved it. And they would, even in the academic year after the summer, they would like rally around my room. And I'd go to the window and I'd like stand on the window. I'm like, 96, you fire me up, like before a football game. And then do a cheer. And then I just ran into one in New York City 2 weeks ago. And I said, take a picture of us, because he recognized me as King Beast. And then he set out the 96. And I said, you fire me up. And then I'm getting always.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So
yeah.
It's funny that you were saying that you wanted to live up to people's expectations of you. And then you led with love. And here they are wanting to live up to your expectations of them.
Yeah.
To hear that someone fires you up, of course you want to continue that. That feels good to know that you fire somebody up. Okay, so what happens then? You graduate from West Point.
Well, I meet Lawton.
Oh, you met Lawton before you graduated. That's right.
At the end of the junior year, what's so wild is West Point competed for the Truman Scholarship for the first time. And I joke with my Rhodes, Marshall, Hertz, all these other fellows that with the Truman, the university can only put up 4. So you have to compete within the university, and then you can compete for. Whereas with like West Point, Middle School, Harvard, for Rhodes, Marshall, we'll push 20 to 25 cadets or students out in that. So I was selected, and so was my roommate, Ben Block, who was the best man at my wedding. And we ended the junior year, went to the Truman Fellowship. They have like a leadership week. There was like 50 of us. And it was like midweek of this conference, and I had met Lawton, and Ben and I decided that we wear a uniform. So on a bus, we're both in a uniform. Lawton walks by, and she goes, oh, there's 2 of you. She had met Ben. I'm like, yeah. Look. I scooted over. Why don't you sit down? Had this amazing day. The next day, I think Ben, he almost threw this thing off, told her that I had a girlfriend.
And did you?
I did. And he found out that her boyfriend was living with her. He had graduated from Brown and I was dating a girl Brown. That's just a coincidence.
Scandalous. I'd forgotten this.
And then and this is one of my moments, I call it 30-second moments. The next night, Friday night, midnight, our paths cross on this campus, William Jewell campus in Liberty, Missouri.
And y'all are 20?
She was 20. I was 21. And we just happened to meet. If I tied my shoes, I would have missed her. I was, not surprisingly, at a bar. She was finishing up her group project. And then we linked up and then talked till 5 a.m. And then we were engaged a month later and married a year later.
A month later and married a year later.
So I go back to West Point to be King of Beast. And I'm like, I'm engaged. Like, oh, I'm so happy for you, Melissa. I'm like,
oh, yes.
Not Melissa.
Oh my gosh.
And then Lawton shows up to West Point. This took my King of Beast stock up. Cut shirt to here. Shorts were about that long. Sunglasses just dropped dead. And people are like, oh my God, the King of Beast.
I mean, she's a movie star beautiful and she's a force of nature.
And she is a force of nature.
And brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, she was a Truman Scholar too.
She was right. We were the first Truman Scholar couple. And then the executive secretary literally became like a father to us. So close to him, we called him Dad.
Wow.
And he died 4 years ago.
Sorry.
Yeah. But
will you tell our listeners what a Truman Scholarship is or scholar is so that people understand?
Sure. Thank you for asking. So Truman chose a living memorial, did not choose a monument. And so it's endowed federal dollars that go to about 50-ish a year, end of junior year, for those wanting to seek careers in public service. It's only $30,000. It's not huge, but it also opens up doors and all the things that a scholarship fellowship can do. And so Ben and I both won it. So Ben and I were roommates and we both won it. So that's what, like in all of this. And then I meet Lawton at the Truman Scholarship with my best friend, and then he becomes the best man in our wedding.
It's wild.
And
there are no coincidences.
Yeah. But I used it in the Army to do a PhD. I said, hey, I have this scholarship. Can I do a third year? I said, yeah. So I was able to weave it in to the whole military career.
That's right. So do you prefer that I call you Dr. Cummings from here on out?
I only 3 places for the doctor. Might need to think about a fourth. Conferences, hotels, in my business card. I put it on my business card, but I don't put it in my signature block.
Yeah. Well, you earned it. I put it everywhere.
The thing is, if you see a signature block with PhD, and here I am as a BC, I think people just imply like maybe analysis paralysis, or I'm worried he might overthink this. I've never. Yeah, or chief medical officer. I've never used it, but I sneak it on the business card.
Yeah.
As a little delight. Kreger, to answer your question.
Kreger.
I love it. That's my favorite.
Which I didn't even ask your permission. I just
you're the one that calls me Kreger.
Yeah. I don't know why. It came out one day and it stuck. You are now married to Lottie.
Yeah.
Now what? I mean, young child bride, children.
22. She was 21.
Wow.
So when think about our kids, think about Q and Addie.
Married now.
Right. Addie's about to turn 22.
Quinn's about to turn 21.
Lawton was married. Was engaged to be married at the age of 21. So one of the things we always did is it was always about the third solution. Like there was always like best for Craig's career is point A, best for Lawton's career is point B. We would always usually settle on the C when we could.
And what was C solving for?
Where it would be best for us as a couple and not all Craig optimized, not all Lawton optimized.
Is that how y'all kept the equilibrium in your marriage? Because one of the things I really admire about you guys is you guys go toe to toe. You guys are true partners.
Yeah.
How did you get to that dynamic?
I mean, when you think about, we've been married 31 years. We met in 2021, so we've kind of like raised each other in a way.
For sure.
So she's done a lot more training than me than I have there's no doubt about that. And she's always been a strong woman like yourself. I think I'm probably more coachable now, but than even I was back then. But I obviously, the fact that I'm still married to her shows that I was coachable because I had to continually improve to be with that woman.
So I've never asked you this, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but have y'all ever hit a rough spot?
Mm-hmm. It was that first assignment. She's top graduate of Tulane. And we chose the location together. We chose my branch together. It was armor, tanks initially, then intel, which is funny because I was going to be a helicopter pilot. So it comes time to make the decision. She's like, what are you going to choose? I'm like, aviation. She's like, what? I'm like, you fly helicopters, you shoot like rockets, you sleep indoors, you wear a onesie with patches. Like,
it's cool.
Yeah. She's like, but then what? I'm like, I'll be a leader. I'll know how to fly. Anyway, we landed on, so I told her the other things. She's like, all those things you told me, that intel thing sounds most interesting. I'm like, all right, I'll do intel. Then I did armor. So this first little assignment, 3 years as a tank officer before becoming intel, we were at Colorado Springs, and it was just gone all the time. And we barely made it out of there. But we did. We like had a moment. It was like a crossroads right before. It was time to go now to become intel. And this was like, can she keep going with this lifestyle? And barely got her across, but got her across. And
How did you get across?
Then we went to Arizona. And well, I'll tell you this funny story. On the way to Arizona, which is, of course, most military bases are in the middle of nowhere. That's where land is cheapest. This place, Fort Huachuca, we're driving there now. And there's this one highway from Tucson all the way down there. And we're playing the radio, spinning, no stations. And finally, boom, 101.1, all hits all the time. And I look over, I'm like, honey, all the hits right here. We don't need any other station, just this one.
Our own dance party.
And she laughs, and she starts laughing, and then the tears just start pouring down her face.
Oh.
But we ended up having an amazing time there.
So Arizona saved it in a way?
Yeah, we had a great time. And then this other crazy moment, I was going to get out. I was taking the LSAT at the University of Arizona, getting out of the military.
I didn't know that.
Because I'm like, this is not going to survive. Going like Fort Hood is like, it's too much talent to like give her back. At West Point with Lawton, visiting my brother, who was on the faculty at the time, and I go into a gas station on West Point to pay my bill, and an old professor's there. I said, Craig, I went, sir. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm out of Fort Huachuca, and Lawton and I figured out what's going to happen next. And then he says these magical words to me. He said, let me know if we can help you with your next assignment. And this is like when I started to figure out how the world works.
Mm-hmm. Your relationships.
So Lawton and I go back, we map all the intel sites in law schools, and we see NSA, Georgetown Law School, DC. Hey, sir, do we know anybody at NSA? He goes, Cindy Jubb's there. He was an old professor of mine. I'm like, get out. And so I got handpicked out of that class to go to NSA. Lawton goes to Georgetown. And once I got that assignment, I stopped doing the LSAT class.
Yeah. So I answered for you, but I asked you a question earlier. You said that's when I figured out how the world works. And I think this is very much how you move through the world. How does the world work? What is it that you figured out?
Relationships. And I I would say like I'd be inclined to say networking, but I don't like network. I don't like that word because even though it's a real world, it's a real thing, but I've always felt like I'm just always like you, always wanting to like build a relationship with somebody, always wanting to know them. You don't network. I would never call you a network.
Yeah, no, actually
Never.
I'm terrible at networking. Yeah.
You're a relationship builder. And so you realize that in these relationships, like I was close to those officers when I was a cadet. And that then they would love nothing more than help me and Lawton stay in the Army, can do this. And then you realize, whoa, even in a place like the Army, people, I want these people in certain places. It's not like you just receive sheet of paper, which is the way I thought the Army worked. And you just, wherever it says, you go. And that is the way it is for probably most of the force. And then you realize, wait, I know people over here. Maybe they have a job. And so after that, we basically managed our own career. And what I joke about, what you'll so appreciate about Lawton, because I brought her into some of my personnel meetings, like my HR meetings, where they're like, well, you really want to go to Mojave Desert. That's where the rock star officers go, and they do assignment there. And she was there, and Lawton would say, well, where else could he go? And they're like, well, you go to NSA, but you don't want to be with that strategic assignment. So Lawton's takeaway was, when the Army says go that way, the best place for us as a couple and family was that way. They didn't want me to do a PhD. They didn't want me to go teach at West Point because you're kind of out of the muddy boots Army for too long doing those things. And I just always assumed the risk, and it enabled Lawton to then practice law in New York City. And so we were always like finding that option C.
Okay. So then what came after? Did Afghanistan come after, or did you go?
Well, then I got plucked. I got handed at a West Point where I was teaching a year early by David Tone, who I'd served for before. And he was out in Denver, and he said, come be my executive officer. And one of my closest friends was his current executive officer. And he and I were always taking care of each other. But so I left West Point early, and I went back out to Denver. Then Al, that bestie friend, was working for an organization, and they needed someone to go to Afghanistan. It was a new intel organization called Scope. And it was a brainchild of General McChrystal and Mike Flynn. And they said, we want you to be the first LNO. So I learned the Scope mission, and then I went to Afghanistan and represented them for about a 4-month. These tour, I was fortunate, was short, but this is the way the JSOC usually rotated, very intense and shorter 90, 120 day missions.
So talk a little bit about the role that you were playing in the group that you were coming into, because you weren't part of the group that you were coming into, if I remember correctly. So tell the audience a little bit, describe what LNO means, what you were doing, and then what the group was that you were actually joining, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I was so Joint Special Operations Command. This is your McRaven here locally in Austin, commanded. It's probably the most prestigious command in the military, and they command Delta Force, Army Rangers, and Navy SEALs, and those rotate. And so they go after only like the top 10 targets. So like mission of JSOC was to get bin Laden. Conventional forces weren't doing that. So you're talking about a very elite unit. This organization was trying to put together intel from signals intelligence to human intelligence and studying maps. And they were trying to look at things other people weren't, kind of an unconventional way. And so that team in DC, I go forward as the liaison officer, LNO, and I'm communicating, hey, this is what they're looking for. Can you guys spin on this? And then they'll say, hey, give this to the command, tell them to look over there, when nobody else is telling them to look over there, because they see something they've put together through all this different intelligence. We should be looking over there. And so I mean, it was a great, super special, because it's just like a highly elite intel unit or highly elite operational unit And we had some success. I got a Bronze Star for my service there. And then
I love that you're like, we had some success. I got a Bronze Star.
Well,
but before we go there, I want to back up a little bit. Yeah. So what was the culture like? Because you were kind of an outsider.
Yeah.
So how are you received?
I mean, I can sort of blend in on a group, but when you ask that question, I think about going into the gym with them and they are doing like one-arm push-ups and like working out like animals.
Are these guys like SEALs pretty much?
Yep.
Yeah.
And they are just like they operate around like nonstop, middle of the night. And so a funny story, which gets to the point. I was there for Thanksgiving. They have a turkey trot. I'm like, oh, I'll do a turkey trot. So line up. General McChrystal had landed like 5 a.m. And this was like a 7:30 formation. And I said, hey, how far are we going on this turkey trot? I thought it'd be like 2 miles, 3 miles. 8 miles. I'm like, that is not a turkey trot. There's no trotting for 8 miles. And it was in formation. Here I am. I'm committed at this point. Had to do it. And so we super fast paced and they released us back. And I think General McChrystal finished like first or second. Like that kind of leader.
Yeah.
Had General McChrystal. So, and then the last thing, this story is funny. Fortunately, it's funny. But I thought that again, to the culture blend, that I would, on Army Navy Saturday, we had, his name was Admiral Harward. He was the Navy commander of this deployed unit in Afghanistan. So I had the great idea to get a goat, and I was going to walk into the VTC held around the world in our Afghanistan spot. I was going to have a Navy goat.
So for people that are listening, Army-Navy game, big football game, big rivalry. So you basically got their live mascot.
So I work a deal with someone from the market, Afghani, to buy a goat. So I take a truck. I go off Bagram to get a goat.
Story is terrifying.
And the guy's there with the goat. And then there's all these other Afghanis and they start to approach my vehicle. They come at me. I'm like, put the goat in the back in the truck. And then I had to pull my weapon and say, everybody back up. Everybody back the fuck up.
You could have had like an international incident for this stupid fucking goat.
I know. It sounds embarrassing to say, like, truly the closest I came to death was when I was securing a goat in Afghanistan. Because I wasn't going out on these missions and knocking down doors. I was just saying, no, look over there. So then I get the goat back. I get the goat back on base. I hide the goat overnight. The next morning, I go get the goat right before the VTCs. I walk in the building with this goat on a chain, and a team of Navy SEALs literally takes me down in like 6 seconds. I am head down. The goat is gone. I walk into the next room, into the VTC, and they had an Army mule. They had a mule with a shaved end for Navy in it. And it was a classic moment.
Yeah.
And then we took all these photos.
So they saw you coming a mile away.
Yeah. So I tried to add a little levity there for people who have like the most serious mission on the face of the planet.
But that's also leadership, Craig. That's one of the other things I love about you. So you don't just bring love, you bring humor. You don't take yourself so seriously, which is why I think people say that, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're military, but you're such a badass. You have a fucking Bronze Star.
The Bronze Stars, we gave a lot of Bronze Stars. You have to perform. But I did not have like a V device like one of our founders, Blake Hall, actually on the ground with bad guys. Like, so there's the V device, but I did get the Bronze Star. So.
And what was the Bronze Star for?
It wasn't tied. We had a couple of missions that were successful. And so I would just say that's what it was for. And it was like, Lawton was like, did not like me being in Afghanistan, of course, like any spouse.
That was going to be my next question. Were Cooper and Addie around at this point?
Yeah, they were tinies. Lawton was full-time lawyer.
Oh.
She had to pull back her hours. And I said, honey, I know you don't love this war or Iraq, but I'm reading the intel of what they're saying and what they're wanting to do in America. So we need to be here. But that was hard. I mean, if you ask her about the cancer, she'll say she thinks it tracks back to the amount of stress when I was deployed.
Whoa.
And hormones in milk.
Yeah. And hormones in milk and all our environment and estrogen.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So we made it, but yeah. I mean, that was fortunate. Like I did not have to, I was taking trips in and out of Iraq, especially in my next job. But I never had to do like a Joseph Kopser, did like 15 months in Iraq and what so many soldiers did. So, but a lot of this is the nature of being a strategic intel officer. I'm not like with a tactical unit knocking down doors.
Yeah, in the line of fire directly. Okay, so you brought it up. I want to talk about it. When was Lottie diagnosed?
So I decide I'm going to resign from the Army. Literally the day that the PhD earn out, to use language people might recognize, but I owed the Army 5 years back as like payment for allowing me to have that sabbatical. And that was in 2009. I resigned. So a lot of people know me in the military, having resigned in my 17th year because no one was doing that because you do 20 years and you get all the benefits. So I resign. I start work with some friends who are entrepreneurs. 2 weeks later, she finds a lump on her breast. And then 2 weeks later, double mastectomy, then reconstruction. So now it's about 5 months after I get out. She's bald, she's gone through chemo, in a little bit of a haze, wearing a wig. And we have 45 days of cash left in the business. I'm like, oh man.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, because people thought it was either like, it was kind of like a goat or hero type decision. And if you do something like that, you get out and walk away from the benefits. But I pulled together a meeting in NSA with relationships that I had. And one of the people at the meeting took this briefing that Sean Lane, SEO Ghost Dog, I set the meeting, he built the slide deck and pitched it. And the Army said, we want to do that. We put a cellular network on the battlefield for the first time. And we had a plan to build software and help with hardware to do that. Because even then, we had iPhones in America, but everything was like a push to talk radio. So I leave and then basically go right back to the office where I worked. And I'm like, what do you think? Even though I knew what the answer was. Of course, I'd love that. So soldiers don't have to drive and get blown up. Use the cellular network to send fingerprints. And
so you saw a problem from the inside and solved it from the outside and came right back in and sold it in.
Which is great. I love it when we see it among founders because they know the problem so well and the customer set. So she never knew, and then went through the chemo and.
Oh, you never told her that you were about to run out of cash and the business was going to go under potentially?
No, I just showed up and showed her a nice office and So
we made
it through that. We made it through that. And I think the story that you alluded to, the tears in Aspen, was right at that time when, and this is like always trying to self-improve. And I used to be like picky about like her car, and she would throw the trash in the bin. And I go out and I'm like, oh, I can't believe she's littering the car. My Army brain.
Yeah. And just being married.
Yeah.
We just, find irritation in the small stuff.
And like, nice car. Can I use your trash can? No, I like just throw it right there. And I irritatingly go and clean it out. And then after she gets the cancer, there was nothing I'd rather do than go clean that trash out. I look at that trash now and I love that trash. I still pick it up, but I love it.
You love that she stuffs her trash in the side door.
I love that she still does it. It's like, that's the trash can right there. So that's like the perspective, like, I think of like, as we get older and you get wiser. And so those are the kind of lessons I like to tell Addie and Cooper now so they have perspective. And my father, I got this from my father, like, you like, pluck a car and makes a little dent and he's like blowing up. And I was always like, I don't want to be that person, even though it takes a while, I think, for some of the things that your parents to like.
Yeah. Oh, we haven't talked about that. So Okay, so your dad was someone that you kind of had to manage in that way.
He just was just very strict and things like dents or anything. He had a saying called head up and locked. We still, my brothers and I joke about it, head up and locked. And he would use it too much.
What does it mean?
It's like, oh, this driver, it's anger, like driver's head up and locked. And wasn't paying attention, didn't put a blinker on. You dented the car, head up and locked. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you undid that. Yeah, that pattern.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've off ramped a lot, and I probably have on ramp too. I don't want to be. It's not like, oh, machete them. The more time I spend with my mom, the more I find myself recycling. You know, it's like
the stuff keeps coming back
I'm
up.
just like, oh, I'm gonna rinse it out
until you heal it. It's gonna keep coming back up, brother. Until you actually deal with it. Okay, so Lottie beats the cancer first time. And then what does life look like?
I ended up selling that company 2 years later. It was a $40 million deal. And we had other partners. And Sean and I made a big bet that we could keep this going. So we basically flipped over our share. We each took $1 million, but it would have been, 7-8 times that. Bought out more of their interest and kept going. We started another company. We basically sold the product company to the United States Army Intel. And then we started a services company that then continued, like all the engineers who built it, now we'll sell their time. So we started a company behind it. And Sean and I did that. And then the product, we had some other product ideas. They did not moonshot. And then I spun out. So I recruited David Tone and Dan Cummings first. My brother, I recruited early when I was at BTS. Right after we started that new company, we recruited Dan.
Which is the services company.
So Dan was COO and I was CEO, but Ride Scout was starting to take off. I'm like, I gotta do this full time. So I recruited David Tone, who pulled me to Colorado. I'd served with him twice. Again, relationships. My brother, and here's a boss that I was super close to.
What's interesting here is the shift is happening from, okay, there are people that lifted you up and now you're starting to lift people up.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting that it's like a major to lieutenant colonel. I'm recruiting. Now I'm the business owner saying, come be a CEO and be a business owner.
Yeah.
And I gave the pitch to my brother and David, like, the path to wealth is powered by ownership. And so bring them in. We had like $3, $4, $5 million in contracts, and then sequestration hits. And all these government contracts got cut, literally like the carpet.
What is sequestration?
It was a massive, it was a pullback on the existing contracts. Like
okay.
even commitments.
Like a freeze?
It was like a massive freeze. So even if you had won a big contract, they said it's gone, bye.
Right, cost
saving, yeah, it was horrible. Right after I give them like full command of the company, and they hustled, got a few more contracts, kept the business going. But we still were in a hole, and then ended up selling Ride Scout with Joseph, and whether we get to that or not. And I took a third of my proceeds, invested it in the company because I was a church, like a JC movement. And I'm like, I've recruited David, my brother's there. We got to get it all because we had owed debts. And so I took a third Ride Scout, paid all that off, did a buyout, we all bought in to own most of the company. And they grind for like 10 years, right? It was like 5 million, 6 million, 7 million, 5 million. And the last year they did about 13 million. But in September of last year, as a prime, which is in the defense space, like a big deal to be
the main contract.
The prime. Yeah. It was a joint venture prime with them as the managing partner, won a $740 million NSA contract.
Holy shit.
That'll probably be worth $1 billion by the time it's said and done.
That's huge.
And so when I got the word, Lawton was sitting beside me. This was a 10-year journey. The foregoing of the proceeds when we sold the software.
Almost failed multiple times.
I was like, I said, I got to go take a nap. All I can do is sleep. Just take a nap. And now Dan and David and myself too, like, should have a pretty massive liquidity event.
So your brother,
So like, I've been thinking, I can't believe I pitched them so hard to do this. And these were their prime years, right? These are like their 50s.
So it's high risk.
And it was high risk. And the lesson for the VC, what I've seen now, great companies really take 10 or more years.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can have these pops. I mean, Ride Scout was a little bit of a quick pop. Success exit, not massive, but successful, great for founders and investors. But most companies, it is just grind your ass off for 10 plus years. And then one day you get a contract for like that. This ID Me, another company, was like.
So we're starting to touch on what we haven't talked about Ride Scout yet, which I want to get to, but we're starting to touch on what you're doing now, which you're an investor and a fund owner with your partner. And it's interesting because I've never heard you talk about this way. It's almost like you were the accidental fund because you started to invest as you were operating in a way, because you were building this team, you pulled yourself out, but you were still operating with Ride Scout, if I'm not mistaken. So it's almost like you started to step into investing. But you just said something that I want to ask you about. So you said you're starting to realize that it takes a good company, about 10 years to grind it out, to see really big success. You know, as an investor myself, and I've learned this through you, which we'll talk about in a second, you know, a lot of LPs have expectations that, you know, they're going to start seeing distributions in 6 to 8 years. And I know the model, and please correct me if I'm saying anything that's incorrect, because this is not my world, it's yours. But I know the model is you're kind of looking for the moonshot, right? Or multiple moonshots within a fund.
It's a power law business. That's
exactly. Right. You know that not everything is going to succeed. As a matter of fact, most will fail, but you're looking for the big wins. So now we're getting to the point where we met.
Yeah. I got reach out from Doug McCormick in DC, West Point graduate, massively successful private equity investor. And he said, Craig, I want you to look at this fellowship. And I'd done Truman and I'd been helped with scholarships at West Point. So I felt like I knew most of the fellowships, to include the White House Fellowship. And he's like, no, take a look. And like Doug is just one of those people. He's not reaching out. Like, I'm always pitching something. You know, you'll take one of the three things I'm doing, like general. But with Doug, it's like, you're going to look at it. And I look at it. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I only had one shot, one look. And it was going through that process, Peter and Tanya, and mapping my life and we had been backing all these military veterans, that I said, you know, I want to make this part-time hustle my full-time hustle. And not to be exclusive on military veterans, but that is the North Star, is our training, our leadership training. And we over-index on vets. So we go to Aspen that amazing week. And then the next day, we flew home from Aspen on Sunday. Monday morning, I called a Stuttgart. We'd sold Ride Scout to Mercedes-Benz. And I said, hey team, I'm going to begin the off ramp. And I'm going to pop out January 1st to go full time.
So I'm going to give a little context. Going to add some color here, because this is another major pivot. You've made so many pivots, but this is another big one. And I just want to kind of set the stage for what was going on and what happened just before. So you become a part of the Henry Crown Fellowship. None of us knew what we were signing up for. Let's be honest. There's no way we could have known. We walk into a room with 20 other people.
21, I guess, because our class was 22.
I guess I'm not counting myself. So 21. 21 other people. And we spend a week together, mostly off of our phones, talking about all the things you're not supposed to talk about. We talk about sex, religion, politics, money, marriage, ethics, our biggest problems, our tragedies, our fears. We just lay it all out to bear in that first week in a way that I don't think any of us expected and caught us off guard. We literally fell in love with each other. And on the heels of that, the first note we get that I recall is your note saying, I quit my job. And it was like, and it is kind of like the catalyst or kickoff to a midlife crisis. At least it was for me.
Yeah.
And you were the first one that just took action right away, right out of the gates. And many of us followed suit in the months and years that followed, but you were the very first one to quit. And I don't think any of us, except for maybe one of us, is in the same job that we were at that point in time.
So life-changing. I mean, that fellowship is just like, beyond life-changing. It probably doesn't make any sense when you say it, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah. And it changes all aspects of our lives. Like,
my gosh, the family,
totally.
You think you have no time in your life at all, and you have no space for more friends. And then now you have another family.
Totally. Yeah. In fact, the first time I ran into you in Austin, you and Lottie, you know what I'm going to say, aren't you? You introduced my husband as your brother-in-law. We were at an event and you were introducing us to different people. People literally thought I was your sister because you were introducing Jeff as your brother-in-law, and you were relatively new to Austin.
Yeah.
Which I thought was so charming and endearing. So now your side hustle is no longer investing. You're now diving into the deep end of starting a fund with, as you referred to, Kelly, as your second marriage in life.
Yeah.
Now what? You guys are off to the races, raising money.
He said, let's do it. He was still working. I said, all right, I want to go full time into this.
And the fund's called Moonshots.
Moonshots Capital.
And the thesis?
And we had the thesis is we invest in extraordinary leadership. And it's powered by our West Point training, our military training. We're literally like millions of dollars poured into training them soldiers to be great leaders. And Kelly has been investing since 2004, me since 2011, as we looked at our body of work, all angel investments. And then we had started to do like these SPVs because we formed Moonshots Capital in 2014. So this was before fellowship. And we said early stage, which was our comfort zone, the only thing we can really control for is the quality of the leadership, because they're going to pivot, and so that's what we've done. And we just have become more embedded with that thesis, more believing of it, especially going through like COVID and seeing how these military founders like performed and how they led their companies through. So you don't have to be a vet. We have this massively what we call non-traditional fund. When I say non-traditional, I'm not saying diverse. What I'm saying is military veteran, woman, Black or brown founder. And of all of our 38 fund investments, just about 80% of them have one of those on the founding team.
That's very
Women
cool.
is 20%, Black and brown 33%, military vet now like 38%. So what we've seen, what we love about the vets, this like perseverance and grit, is what we see in women and people of color. Now, we have zero goal, like none. We could invest in 40 white Stanford graduates, but we're just that leadership, that like savvy, scrappy blend that we see among underrepresented groups in VC. We're drawn to that leadership, but
and it's proving out in the businesses that you guys are investing in. What's your darling right now? Is it ID.me?
I mean, ID.me is always going to be probably the main story for us since we've been there since the beginning. And Kelly, I call Kelly and Blake, those are brothers. Kelly's been on the board since 2011. And like Blake and I say he's like a brother-in-law. That's how close we all are. Right now, a company called Gretel, which was co-founded by the cellular company. The guy who built that software that Sean Lane envisioned about networking the battlefield that we sold
the
to the
very
Army.
first company
the
that you
architect,
watched?
the guy who built that software is Alex Watson. And so when we sold the software and then we all went our separate ways, Alex started another company that he sold to Amazon called Harvest that Kelly and I invested in. Kelly was on the board. And then Alex left Amazon and we were like, Alex, what are you doing next? He's like, I just left Amazon 5 minutes ago. We're like, what are you doing next? Can we wire? Can you give us an account? And we just kept peppering him. And he went on this journey, put together this world-class team of previous founders, started a company called Gretel. And literally like fought off Andreessen to lead the seed. We said, let's do this. We know each other. There's high trust. Kelly's in LA, you're in San Diego. Kelly be on the board, all help and all the things. And that company, I can't write the number down because they've raised now seed A and B. But I would say it's clearly north of $1 billion now.
Wow.
And it could be bigger.
Holy smokes.
And they're doing synthetic data. They were sort of like the first company doing synthetic data. And it's become like sort of, use Army language, the last tactical mile in AI. And they're partnered with Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Databricks, Snowflake. And
massive logos.
And it's just like, so little old Moonshots Capital, Fund 1, when that company exits, and we also have a Fund 2 investment.
Thanks.
In Gretel. People are going to be like, who the hell are these Moonshots? Because we think Fund 1 is probably a 5 to 10x. And we would never say that. Like Kelly is always like, don't
say that out loud. Yeah.
He's like, say it's 2x.
Yeah.
Under promise, over deliver. But even Kelly will say no.
So you just touched on something else, which is a theme in your leadership style, and that is trust. So we've touched on love, we've touched on humor and levity, but trust is something I'm seeing too. That's something that's important to you. That's really insightful. How do you get there? What builds trust?
I think authenticity and vulnerability probably power it. I'd say authenticity, vulnerability, and doing what you say.
High say-do ratio.
And sometimes, Kelly and I talk about this. If we have military vets on the founding team and they have a non-military vet co-founder, sometimes they'll feel like almost more trust with us than they will with their own co-founder. And I'm not even saying it's a negative way, but there's that
the shared
trust.
Experience.
And I think because we're vets, there's also more trust bestowed upon us. And then you feel that much more duty to really earn and deserve that respect.
Yeah.
But I've thought it's funny the themes that you're hitting on, because I've thought like, am I really a great VC? I don't know. I mean, it's looking like it. It's looking like performance wise, but I think it's trust, the loving leadership, the integrity, these relationships,
having fun.
It's like all that like does so much unlocking in a boardroom with introductions, in partnerships. So we win almost every deal that we compete for. And it's because we say, pick a logo and call the founders.
Yeah.
Any logo. That one went to 0. And I thought you didn't get along with the founder or something happened there. We just say, call them.
Wow.
So when they diligence us, and these founders will say like, Moonshots will do anything for me. I totally trust them. And then we win.
Yeah. So that's the other thing is you don't just build relationships, you maintain them.
Yeah.
Because I'm hearing that too over time. Like
you're like,
yeah. Well, I'm looking for the gems. I'm looking for the gems. Well, like I learned how to invest from you. I'm always looking for the gems. I'm always looking to learn.
My business partners like Shaw Lane, BTS, the Cellular Network, Joseph Grosser, Kelly Purdue. These are like my business marriages, and I'm still like super close. They're my pallbearer list, like these business relationships. And now Lot and I married 31 years. Kelly and I have been, together as friends and partners 19 years. So there's the maintenance of the relationship, and then there's the near ones, maintain it. Then there's the maintenance of ones like Charlene lives in Columbus. And then we just let his seed wrap. Wow. He said, I want you guys to leave my seed wrap.
There you go.
And so, yes, maintenance.
Okay, so now I want to bounce back to what's going on at home, because you're doing all of this. Can I go here?
Go.
Because you're doing all of this. I'm going to try not to cry now. And moving and shaking, and it's high pressure again. And what's happening at home? Tell us about how old are Cooper and Addie? What's going on with Lottie?
We moved to Austin after selling Ride Scout, and I started to come here, and I'm like, this is the coolest city on the planet. Tell the family we need to move. They're like, wait, did you just say Texas? I'm like, I did. Austin, Texas. And we move here, and Lawton had taken some time off with the cancer, but she was teaching law at the time. And we move here, and we get settled. She goes back to a law firm. So she had been a lawyer and then a law professor, and now she's back. She got this fellowship for women coming back in the workforce, and she got with the number one Texas law firm, Jackson Walker. Kids are like middle school, and then in March of 2019, she feels a lump in the same exact spot. But she had this cough, this
I remember
cough, and she got X-rays, and we thought it was maybe pneumonia or infection, and then they realized it was stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. So that was a blow. Cancer comes back. It's like, because we did the whole thing, like kids shaving our head. Like the first time, it was like kids went through that journey, and then now we got the news again, and then friends collapsed in on us. You all were there. I can remember sitting in the bedroom, like sending the WhatsApp to the group.
I don't even know if you remember this. You weren't in your right mind. You called me and said, I need you to buy the house next door.
Oh, yeah. I remember it was
and I was like, fuck.
Still mad you didn't know. You bought enough houses.
You did. I know I bought enough houses. You did offer to make me coffee, though. That is my love language.
So so that happened, and then she stopped working and focused on her health, and then
wait, slow your
got the cancer, so she had to. There was surgery. Yeah,
slow your roll.
All right, slowing.
First, and I'm sorry to go there.
Yeah,
but first stop was MD Anderson. And what they told her was not great. Do you remember this, or have you blocked it out?
We say, what do we do? Where should we go? So we asked the network, where should we go? And it was MD Anderson was like most recommended. Number 2 was Dr. Deborah Patt at Texas Psychology. And so like the doors opened, like the friends got us down there quickly. We even got a reservation at it's almost like the cancer hotel that they had right there on the campus. And we go into this massive machine. It was like, go to spot 1 and check in. And then you go to spot 2 and like, well, check in again. Now you're going to spot 3. And that day they said, we have 2 options. We can do treatment A, and that'll probably last for a year. And then we'll use treatment 2, or we can do treatment 2, and that'll probably last for a year, then treatment 1. And so we got those options. And, it wasn't a very positive experience. It's so much research and teaching is done there.
Yeah.
That it's not like a concierge experience.
Well, and they told her to make arrangements.
Well, it was like, you're not going to live very long with this disease. And it was a little bit at this point where stage 4 metastatic breast cancer was pretty much a death sentence. So we go back to that hotel room, cry our eyes out, take a bus back to Austin, go see Dr. Pat. She goes, hold on. She looked like you, like look the vibrant woman that Lawton is. Said, I know exactly what we're going to do. We're going to do Ibrance. Well, we're going to do hysterectomy and surgery and get you on Ibrance. And I think you can live 5 to 10 years. And our world just like overnight. She was amazing. Now that was 5.5 years ago. And we haven't seen Dr. Pat. You see her a lot up front. Then when you get scans, but I saw her earlier this year. I'm like, okay. So 5 years ago, you said 5 to 10. What would you say today? She goes, I'd say 5 to 10. I'm like, all right, fair enough. So, I mean, she takes chemo for life, oral chemo. And it's supposed to be a 21-day regimen, 7-day off, 21 on, 7 off. The 7 days gives you time for your white blood cell count and your immune system to come back. She's able to take probably now between like 10 and like 14 days and just knocks her out. And you've never known it. No one really knows.
She's a powerhouse.
Even that text we got last night in WhatsApp, I'm like, bad news, but that's like a layup. It's a layup. What you don't want is the spread. That's the...
Yeah, I saw that in your question.
That's what you don't want. So I think there's so much happening in the space. And even in Fund 3, one of our investments, just came into Stealth Fire Nexus, is going after her cancer and stopping with the drug that stops the metastases of it. And that's what does the killing of cancer. It's the metastases. So I feel like if she can live another handful of years, I think for cancer, at least breast cancer and others, will be like HIV. Yeah. You'll just be living with HIV.
Yeah, just buying time for the next advancement, the next drug.
It's not going to kill you the way like HIV did. And I think we're getting close, and AI will help.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's like a part of our lives and a reality that no one sees. Kids see it a little bit, but
how does that affect the way you guys live your lives?
Well, the scans are like every 3 to 4 months. And so it's like you're living your life like this next scan, maybe the one where it can't, it's out of remission and spreading. So it like goes back to the trash. You live life with perspective, and you don't worry about the small shit, and you live life, you just power through it, joy and grace. And then you hit an age, you're seeing so many things that will take the lives of friends and family. But because of where she is, I think we squeeze more. We try to squeeze more joy out of everything we do, and not let say sorry a lot, thank you a lot, not take things too personally. And so I used to say, I would still say it, if it doesn't kill you, cancer is the best thing that can happen to you, because it just puts everything in perspective. Friendships, family. And so I tell people, I've even said it to our group, like, if there's someone in your life that really matters to you and that relationship is not right, act as if you've just got a text message from that person that says, I was just diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic cancer. And then what would you do? Oh, well, I'd go to the house. I'd be the first person in the house. I'd be the last person to leave. So act. Don't wait to get that text, because I have gotten that text. Get it right now and live and treat that person as if you're about to get that text. Just think about that. And because you just think like, oh, I'm just going to be marrying this person forever. Or I'll fix things with my mom eventually. So being more present, right?
That's why you're awake. That's why I always say you get it, Greg Cummings. You get it.
Oh, It's a tough way to learn when I'm.
It
but we all
sucks.
have everybody has something going on in their life.
Yeah.
That's the thing we know. Like everybody has something going on in life.
Yeah.
This one's a little more public and scary. And I tell founders, like for years, I'm like, it's not combat, not cancer. We'll be just fine.
Yeah. And act like newlyweds.
Yeah. Because you have to act it. This is Lawton's always beat this drum. Like love is an action.
I love that. Love is an action.
Love is an action. And so you do have to go and like act like newlyweds. But I do. I say about now after being in VC, which is powered so much by FOMO, fear of missing out on like the hot deal, like, who's investing where? Oh, let's see if I can get in there. I feel like everything is powered by FOMO, relationships included. And I have a fear of missing out on not being with her. And that keeps me like focused on the right things.
Yeah. Fully present, tuned in.
Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not going to fuck this up with this woman.
Well, Craig, holy smokes. There's a reason that I'm constantly learning from you.
That was amazing. You like told these, you were like, even as much as you know me, like you connected dots and revealed dots that I didn't see that it's going to make me a better leader.
Oh my goodness.
Literally this podcast.
That's such a huge compliment.
I think I'm going to own, like it really hit me yesterday when you said that. Like, I think I do lead with love. It's for an Army guy, I wouldn't say that.
I mean, imagine if that was part of your thesis. Imagine if you looked for teams that were in love with each other, where it was safe for them, where there was trust, where there were relationships that weren't just built, but have been maintained over time. I mean,
look, if Kelly leads with love, we do counterbalance each other. It kind of works. Like the founders know us like in a traditional way as dad and mom.
You point to yourself when you say mom.
Just to be
I
clear,
love that.
as if I had
you were
to,
in touch with your feminine energy. No, but you were in touch with your feminine energy.
But I feel like I've made Kelly probably softer. He's made me a little harder, which I've needed those lessons. And I think Lawton and I don't know, it's just ongoing cycle of like teaching one another. So thank you for
I love you.
Calling us out. I love you.
I love your family. I'm here for you no matter what. And thank you so much for all of your.
I was so excited.
I love that made you laugh.
I'm so excited for what you're doing here. Just seeing you here looking so beautiful and all of your Carla-ness. The thing is, this is who you are. This is basically, if you turn this into a job, you are getting paid to be yourself. And that's pretty special. You can do that. Thanks. And I think you can.
Thank you. You've definitely seen me come out of my shell in the last several years.
If anybody sees a hot deal, we always want to see a hot deal.
Okay.
Usually early stage.
You heard it here, listeners.
Craig at moonshotscapital.com. Plural moonshots, because there's more than one. And then moonshotscapital.com. They can submit deals and learn more about us.
Hey, thanks, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Go Fund 2 and 1 and 3.
Yes.
Bye, Craiger.
Bye.